Right. So on the hottest evening of the year, just point that out, we'd like to welcome Hayley and to Soul Sisters, who's going to talk about her job as a UK engagement coordinator. I've written this down for international development at headquarters. So thanks very much for joining us, Hayley. And then I believe you've got something prepared to share with us. So over to you.
I think we're having a bit of a mute. Right.
I muted you instead of me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll forgive you. But don't do it again. No, I was saying it's great to be here, and I really appreciate you sort of giving over this very warm evening to listen to me talk. Yeah, I apologise for what I look like, because I'm in actually the hottest room of my house, because my husband Ben, who many of you know, is downstairs playing board games. So he's kind of commandeered the cooler rooms of the house. So I'll do my best, and I'll try not to melt during the evening. So I don't think I'm going to talk for too long, but then there's a famous last words, aren't they? But over the next sort of next short while, I'm hoping to give you a glimpse into how the Salvation Army International Development UK, which is the team that I work for, is working to fulfill its vision of a world without poverty and injustice. But before I do, I thought I'd share a little bit about myself. Some of you know me, and or maybe know of me, as like I said, I'm married to Ben Still, who used to attend Hadley Temple, and his mum and dad still do, of course. But I'm originally from Yorkshire, but Ben and I now live in Stepney in East London with our children Josie and Solomon, and our 2 pet tortoises, who are actually named Yorkshire and Essex. And we go to the Salvation Army in Stepney, and have been there for just nearly as long as we've been married, which is coming up to 10 years. So that's quite a while. But yeah, we love it here, and we love being part of the community here, and doing what we can for the community in this area. So I've been with the International Development Team for just over 8 years, and my role really is to connect the projects that the Salvation Army supports all around the world with our supporters here in the UK. So that's both within the Salvation Army and externally. And I do this through resources, campaigns, social media, marketplace events. So for example, I was at the Territorial Congress and Commissioning in Birmingham this weekend, and also presentations like this one, which have obviously increasingly become on Zoom and virtual, but hopefully I'll get back to seeing people face to face as well soon. So as many of you may know, the Salvation Army as a church and charity has a presence in 132 countries around the world. And the team that I work for, International Development UK, is based at territorial headquarters in London. So I honestly spend most of my time working from home, because I like it. It's a bit quieter, and I feel like I get more done. Although today I'm really lacking the air conditioning of THQ, but I'm powering through. So as a unit of the United Kingdom and Ireland Territory, we partner with territories around the world and support more than 50 community development projects across Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America. And my job is primarily UK based, but occasionally I have the privilege of being able to visit the projects that we are supporting. And in this role, in the past sort of 8 years, I've visited the Salvation Army's work in Bangladesh, Nepal, Kenya, Philippines, and most recently in Malawi. So part of my role, in partnership with the Family Ministries team at headquarters, is to create the Helping Hand Appeal. And this is a year-long awareness and fundraising appeal, which focuses on a different area of our work each year. And core and midweek groups that are linked to the Salvation Army are invited to use the resources that we produce to learn more about the issues and to raise money for the highlighted area of work. So this year, the focus is gender justice, And I will talk briefly about that later on. But next year, the focus will be clean water. And that's why I was in Malawi a couple of weeks ago. So I travelled with 2 colleagues from the video production team to visit the Salvation Army's integrated water, sanitation and hygiene project there, which is also known as a WASH project. And the purpose of the trip was to interview community members and film project activities. And the photos and footage that we gathered will be used in the appeal video, in the appeal videos and in the resources next year. Malawi is known as the warm heart of Africa, and that was certainly our experience. In each community and school that we visited, we were welcomed with song and dance, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I want to share a very short clip of some of the young people singing in their schools gathering to welcome us. It's a very short clip because because we were sort of filming surreptitiously because we wanted to pay attention, but also wanted to capture it as well. So this is a very, hopefully my screen, I'll be able to do my screen share, but here we go. Yeah, so that's the very short clip that just, I hope, sort of captures a little of what it was like, and they had wonderful presentations like that at each location that we went to, or kind of impromptu sung welcomes that greeted us at each community that we visited. Yeah, we definitely felt the warm heart of Africa welcoming us in Malawi. So just to give you a bit of context, we flew into Lilongwe, which is in the middle of the tall and relatively thin Malawi. So I think you can see the map there on the screen. Yes. Yeah, cool. So the WASH project that we went to visit is based in Karonga in the north of Malawi. As you can see, the red marker highlights that. And the most direct route from Lilongwe to Karonga takes approximately 8 hours by car. And as we were arriving in the afternoon, we decided to split our journey in Mzuzu, which you can sort of see towards the top of the map there. Now, as the main connecting road between Malawi and Tanzania to the north, the drive up to Mzuzu and then Karonga is busy with lots of cars, as well as goods lorries traveling back and forth. Malawi is a large importer of goods and products. So during our trip, we were accompanied by Matthews, who oversees the project in Malawi for the Salvation Army. And we were very grateful for his confident driving and that he knew exactly what to say at the various checkpoints and roadblocks along the way. I'm certain we wouldn't have got there without him. So we were very thankful for his presence, even though we thought there were a few hairy moments on the roads where he was driving headfirst into oncoming traffic. But he got us there, we got there safely, and we got there in good time. The road has long, narrow stretches as the tarmac kind of disappears at each side, and this, accompanied with regular potholes in the middle of the road, means it's best travelled during the day. We did have 1 hour of driving in darkness, as I was surprised to find the sunset at around 5:30 p.m. So the days were quite short. And a part of that journey involved like dense fog, which just felt like it was hitting you like a ton of bricks. So yeah, I mean, all in all, it was an eventful journey to Mzuzu. And then from Mzuzu to Karonga, the journey is no less interesting. And as the road wound down a mountainside overlooking Lake Malawi, very picturesque, we saw dozens of monkeys sitting, playing and eating at the sides and sometimes in the middle of the road. And for me, who's only ever really seen monkeys at Longleat or at the zoo, it was really exciting and quite a thrill, but Matthews was just keen to kind of get down the road, and they were a bit of a familiar nuisance, much like I suppose, I don't know, cows would be in rural Devon or something. But eventually we made it to our hotel in Karonga, and it was a beautiful location beside the lake. Then each day we had a further hour or an hour and a half to travel to reach the different communities we were visiting. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, all of this is really just to express just how remote the project locations were. In one community, a woman named Anastasia, I think I've got a picture of her. There she is. She explained how other organisations had chosen not to work with her village as it was so difficult to reach. And she stressed to me just how much it meant to her and her neighbours that the Salvation Army are there and have taken the time to work with the community to construct a borehole for the surrounding villages. Now, the construction of boreholes is one element of this far-reaching integrated project, the others being the provision of hand washing facilities and toilet blocks in schools, agricultural training for food security, and awareness raising around hygiene practices. So whilst women would have to wake early to collect water from the nearest stream or river, a water source which was shared with animals and could easily become contaminated, a borehole means they can now draw clean water quickly and efficiently. So this not only led to a reduction in diarrhea, cholera, and other waterborne diseases, as you would expect, it's also had other impacts for women and girls. And before I go on to that, Zena and I were talking before we sort of started the meeting about this heat we're experiencing. And I mean, I've got a glass of very cold water next to me, and it's obviously extremely easy for us to access clean water and such a refreshing, thing to have in this heat, and something that I don't think I've really ever taken it for granted, but it really does bring it home to you in Malawi when you have to walk miles and miles to collect water, and the water from the tap, if there is a tap, is not safe to drink. But as I said, this water that they have from the borehole is safe to drink and has caused a huge reduction in waterborne diseases, and health clinics are noting a complete lack of reporting of diarrhea, which is absolutely fantastic. But as I said, there have been other impacts for women and girls. So it was previously unsafe for women and girls to travel to collect water at the nearby streams, because they'd have to walk through trees and bushes, concealed areas to get there, and they were ultimately vulnerable to being sexually assaulted, yet this was their only option. So an accessible borehole means women and girls no longer have to wake up early and gather water in fear of their safety. The borehole is centrally located, and for a large number is a short walk from their homes. I mean, I should note that each borehole serves a large number of people, and more are needed. So the journey times to collect water can be reduced for even more communities. And this is something the Salvation Army in Malawi is going to work towards in the next phase of this project. But for those that are close to the borehole, obviously it means there's clean water for everyone, even though there still are long journey times. But for those who are close, the time that has been freed up for them simply through the installation of this local borehole means women can work on income generating activities and girls can spend more time in school. So this is truly an integrated project, not only because of the variety of project activities, but because of the way it impacts all aspects of people's lives. Another element of the project that I want to share about is that which takes place in schools. So without hand washing or drinking water facilities, children can easily become sick. And I think we've got teachers in the room here. Schools, as we know, are a great place for illnesses to spread. And equally, the lack of toilet facilities adds to the poor hygiene practices of as children and community members have no choice but to defecate outside. There are no toilets, so that's their only option. Furthermore, without safe and private toilet facilities, girls were forced to go home when they got their period, and this meant they regularly missed class and ultimately fell behind in their education. So the schools and communities partnered with the Salvation Army to construct toilet facilities, separate blocks for boys and girls, which have private cubicles, hand washing facilities, and a room in which girls can manage their menstrual hygiene, essentially a space where they can clean themselves up and return to class, no stress. And they don't have to miss any classes or any part of their education just because they're on their period. But providing facilities is just part of the process. So attitude shifts and behavioural changes take time. And this is why a group of women, here they are, formed a mothers group. And they created this to help raise awareness about hygiene issues in the school and to support the girls as they reach puberty. And part of this includes advising them about the practicalities of using pads and what they need to do when they get their period. And simply being a support system so no student feels alone. And this care goes alongside other information sharing methods, such as dance and drama presentations, which are used to highlight the importance of hygiene and sanitation in a fun and engaging way. It was really interesting to sort of have these conversations and talk to the sort of students, both boys and girls, and their kind of openness about periods and menstrual hygiene, which I feel is something here in the UK we're a bit kind of embarrassed to talk about. And I mean, I was chatting to a lad who was like 12 years old, and we were talking about what it's like for the girls when they get their periods and stuff, and he was just chatting away about it. And I thought, if I asked a 12-year-old here, he'd be like, oh my word, please don't, leave me alone, kind of thing. So basically the information sharing has kind of transformed attitudes in the schools, and it means it's not this taboo subject, it's something they can talk about, as it ultimately impacts, it's so impactful for their education. It's not just this kind of embarrassing thing, which it shouldn't be anyway, but it's a kind of transformational thing that is helping girls achieve their potential, which is fantastic. Yeah, so young people are at the heart of this project, and they are agents of change in their families and in their wider communities. And I could talk a lot more about my trip to Malawi, about the clean water work, but I generally need to save some stuff for the next year's Helping Hand Appeal. So I'm going to leave the kind of clean water stuff there, but if you have like further questions, then we're going to have time after I've finished talking. So please kind of make a note of any questions you've got and ask me later on. But there's lots more to international development than just clean water. We actually support projects that fall into 6 categories, and I'm kind of going to do a whistle-stop tour of the remaining 5 of them now. So firstly, we have anti-trafficking. So our work seeks to mobilise communities to be resilient to trafficking and support survivors. Projects include children's recovery centres in Malawi and Tanzania, awareness raising in Rwanda, and skills training for vulnerable young people in Ukraine. A project which is obviously currently on hold, though we have been informed that the young people are safe and they're away from the violence that's taking place. Secondly, there's income generation. So 2.5 billion people, mostly women and young people, do not have access to formal financial services. Through our income generation projects, people have the opportunity to earn a living and support themselves with dignity. Our projects include facilitating self-help groups in Kenya and Tanzania to save money together so members can draw loans and start small businesses, thus working together to rise up out of poverty. Another area which has been growing, sadly, really, over the past few years is emergency response. The Salvation Army is often one of the first organisations to provide support in emergency situations, both in the UK and around the world. Internationally, our emergency response work has included equipping health centres during the COVID pandemic, distributing food parcels and providing construction materials to those who've lost their homes in typhoons or hurricanes. And most recently, we've funded projects in Moldova and Romania, where the Salvation Army is providing care and practical support for people who have fled violence in Ukraine. We also have food security. So being food secure means having access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food so that you can have an active and healthy life. In Zimbabwe, we work with local partners to provide training to small-scale farmers so they can adapt to the challenges of climate change, make the best use of their land, and provide for their families. Overall, we recognise the need for long-term, sustainable projects which are community-driven. This is why we support projects where there is an existing Salvation Army presence. This is a far more sustainable model where the Salvation Army not only supports the community, but is part of the community. And finally, gender justice. Working with women around the world to ensure they have equal access to rights and opportunities and the freedom to flourish. In Bangladesh, this work includes educating communities about gender equality, the rights that women do and should have access to. And in Argentina, through group therapy sessions, the Salvation Army walks alongside women who have or are currently experiencing domestic violence. This area of work is the focus of this year's Helping Hand Appeal, as I mentioned, and I wanted to show you a short video which gives an overview of this work. So once again, I'm going to try and share my screen and we're going to hope for the best.
Where do you go when home is not safe? When the person who should love you most is your greatest threat? Domestic abuse is a universal issue. It can affect people of any social status, age, or gender. Most victims are female. Around the world, 1 in 3 women will experience violence in their lifetime. The Salvation Army is journeying alongside women, supporting them to know their rights and take their place as equal and active members of society. In Argentina, women who have experienced abuse at home have found safety, solace, and support at the Salvation Army. Through group therapy sessions, they are welcomed, cared for, and listened to. Learning through play sessions give boys and girls who are exposed to violence at home ways to find non-violent responses to different situations, breaking the cycle of abuse in their families. The focus of this year's Helping Hand Appeal is gender justice. We believe that women should not only feel safe, but have the freedom to flourish. The Salvation Army is taking a stand for women and girls to see gender justice a reality across the globe. Will you join us?
So if you're interested in knowing more about the Helping Hand Appeal and how you can support, then firstly, you can ask me about it later on. But I'd also encourage you to visit the website where there are loads of resources, more videos, and different ways that you can get involved in supporting this work. So that's essentially International Development UK in a nutshell. But I suppose a remaining question is kind of like, what does that mean for me, like for you, for us? And I was looking at your Facebook page as I was preparing for this evening, and it says that this group is a chance to explore what it means to be authentic Christian women in the world today. And I think one of the verses that is central to our work in international development, and a verse which I try to live by each day, is Micah 6:8. He's shown you what is good and what is required of you, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. What does it mean for me to be an authentic Christian woman day to day? Well, if it's based on these verses, I think it means we are called to fight for justice, to pursue what is right, what is good, and what is just in this world. We are to stand up for the persecuted, speak up in the face of oppression, and make ethical choices. We are to reach out to our neighbours, both locally and globally, with compassion. We are to love wholeheartedly and to live a life of kindness. And we do all this in humility, a life of love and service to God expressed in part through our love of and service to others. And that's what I believe the Lord requires of me. And I think the Salvation Army, with its heritage of fighting for justice, has still got work to do. There's still more we can do. God is not finished with the Salvation Army, and he's not finished with me just yet. And one more short video that I want to share with you features some Salvationists from around the world sharing what the Salvation Army's fight for justice means to them.
It is creating God's kingdom on earth. fighting against human trafficking for girls and young women,
ensuring that no child goes to bed hungry.
To me, that means that there's a world where each person can live their best life.
Being a voice to the voiceless by defending those who are not able to defend themselves.
To understand salvation means to understand the pursuit for justice. Quite simply, it's who we are.
Showing faith in action.
The way we include men and women in our committee members. 5 men, 5 women. 10, that's justice to me.
It means working alongside people from all over the world to respond to the needs of the most marginalized, the most vulnerable, and the most hard to reach in our communities.
Ensuring communities have access to safe, clean water.
Fighting against FGM and gender-based violence. Also empowering women for livelihood improvement in the rural communities.
It is loving your neighbor as yourself, which is the core theme of the Salvation Army.
And it's a world where people can have dreams and they have the opportunity to make those reality.
They're able to identify the problems they are facing and they are able to find solutions to those problems.
It is creating God's kingdom on.
Incidentally, the last person in that video was Matthews from Malawi, who drove us round and yeah, kept us straight in the roadblocks and the various challenging moments that we had. Yeah, so I think what I shared this video because I think it's really interesting to hear what different people from around the world say in response to this question: what does it mean to me to fight for justice? What does it mean for the Salvation Army? And for ourselves as part of that, or linked to that kind of movement. And when we finished our time together, I kind of want you to go away and think about that. If you take a question away with you, like, what does it mean to you to fight for justice? What can you be doing to join that fight? Maybe it's supporting the work we're doing at International Development, and you can learn more about that through our website, through social media, our Develop magazine and podcast. The links to all of which are on our website, salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. Maybe you want to fundraise or donate to an area of work that I've mentioned this evening. Maybe it's about raising awareness about global issues facing our world today, simply by starting a conversation with your friends at church, at work, wherever it might be. I think we can all be part of the fight for justice through the choices that we make each day. No matter how insignificant they may seem, the small positive actions we take every day can make a huge difference, from buying fairly traded coffee to cutting down plastic to reaching out to a person in need. I think our daily choices to love and serve others do make a difference. And there's a quote that I often end with when I speak to groups of people, and it's a bit cheesy, but I think it summarizes the importance of community and of playing our part in bringing about change. And it's this, so you know we're right near the end now. Individually, we may be one drop. Together, we are an ocean. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you so much, Hayley. There's an awful lot to think about in there, and thank you for bringing it all. As you said, it was a whistle-stop tour, but there was so much that I was thinking, wow, and sometimes it can seem overwhelming. But I would just like to say for myself, I'm going to open it up for everybody else to ask some questions, but the value of the video films that we can see and share, whether it's when in our self-denial appeal or anything like that, are so powerful when you see individuals talking about how much it means to them. It's just so powerful. So thank you for that. Has anybody got some questions or comments for Hayley? If you've got something, you unmute yourself.
I just thought it was a real eye-opener. I think for me, because I work a lot around domestic abuse awareness and with sort of survivors in my role, but just to see all of the other work that the Salvation Army are doing around gender justice in all of these other countries, I had no idea, and it was a real eye-opener, and it does make you think a lot more about, even though we are still fighting, and quite rightly so in this country, we are a lot further on than quite a lot of other countries, and it just sort of it's just a lot to think about, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. I think the domestic abuse, like the Helping Hand appeal that we're doing this year, which is linked to domestic abuse and sexual exploitation more generally, gender-based violence and things like that, is kind of it's an interesting one because it's universal. So people here in the UK obviously have personal experiences of that, and we obviously have to be extremely sensitive to that. It's been interesting because people have used the resources for the Helping Hand appeal, and have then felt the confidence to kind of share their own experiences of it in their kind of women's groups or in their core settings, which was not really the intention, but is kind of a wonderful byproduct if we can see that there's change happening here in the UK, as well as obviously the focus is to raise awareness about the stuff happening internationally. But yeah, it's a universal issue and needs to be addressed all over the place.
Anybody else want to add?
I think the other thing, just one more, another thing I was just going to add, just going back to the start of your talk, I was really surprised when you mentioned that there were some areas that couldn't get anyone to work with them just around the clean water because they were so far away, and that's really surprising because it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, which just seems so unfair and really concerning. And so yeah, I was really surprised about that.
Yeah, I mean, this particular community was, I mean, it was a drive. Like, it was, speaking for the fact that, so from that map earlier, like Malawi is quite long and thin, and territorial headquarters in Malawi is right at the bottom in a place called Blantyre, and so it's probably about a 12 to 14 hour drive up to Karonga, and then that's when you're in like the town of Karonga, and then to get up to these communities is then another hour and a half, and it was bumpy, like it was not a good road. And so on the one hand, you're like, oh, I can kind of understand why an organization would struggle to work here, because it's costly, it's like time costly to get there if they don't have the vehicles, whatever it might be. And there was something, I was very inspired by the Salvation Army in Malawi to be the ones, that made it there. They made the commitment to that community, and they kind of, yeah, they made the commitment, and they said, we're going to work with you, and they did, and there's a borehole now that's there in that place. And like, it's that whole thing, like, there's so much, and like Zena said, it's overwhelming, but if you can reach one person, one community, if you can see transformation for even just a few, that's like, and I mean, there's always more you can do, but like, it is a kind of enough in some ways. Like, if you can transform one person's life, then that's incredibly powerful for that person and for that community. And I think I was pretty I don't know, I can't really phrase it right, but I was sort of proud of the Salvation Army for being the ones, and I was proud to be a member of this organization for that reason.
And it's crazy to think that all those women and girls are risking their safety just to get water. So that borehole is just completely, transforming their lives in ways that I would think we couldn't even imagine. It's a real eye-opener as well.
I think I agree with what you just said there. You talked about one project at the start, and actually you're talking about a borehole, but the end result is safety. I mean, you're very good to say you never take water for granted, but I think a lot of us take water and sanitation and all the other things so much for granted. I could leave a tap running and forget about it, and then it could fill that bucket that was on that lady's head that she would have to risk her life to carry back to the house. So it kind of it impacts a lot, that one water bore knocks onto education, safety, sanitation, health. It's a huge thing, isn't it? Huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And income generation as well, like just having the time to do something else other than stand around waiting for water.
Yeah,
like that was something else they meant, like the ladies mentioned. It was like you get there and there's a queue because everyone's woken up early to go and get water because they want to get it sorted before their day starts.
Yeah.
And you're like, like stood around waiting.
Yeah, no. There's so many different things that we take for granted, but actually that one thing for a community can help so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to add to the conversation?
What's any idea what the sort of cost is and the time is to do each sort of borehole? Thinking, do you know that?
I think, well, it's interesting because it will depend on it depends on quite things like how deep the water source is, like how far they have to drill down, and how many pipes they need and things like that. I believe it's around $15,000 to get everything, but equally that also depends on whether, because sometimes or often the community will help to source the bricks and the sand that is used, like that's kind of their contribution to the project, and some of the labor. But yeah, in terms of getting all the machinery, I think it's around $15,000. But often, like this, in this case, it's part of this larger project, which is many more dollars worth. So often we wouldn't probably like just drill one borehole, but yeah, it's around that. But we like if people were to contribute, you could contribute sort of like the a sort of a smaller cost, which would be towards the larger project, and would go towards kind of reimbursing the project cost to ensure other projects could take place. But I mean, I'm going to say if it's not $15,000, I'll comment on the YouTube thing and put the right the right thing in later on.
It seems like a quite, when you say it like that, quite a small amount when you realise how many people's lives is changing in such a big way, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely affordable when you think of like the amount of well, the things that people in here could spend £10,000 or £12,000 on, I suppose, that probably wouldn't have the same impact to that many people. It feels like a worthy investment,
I was just about to say that it's a very small price to pay for people's safety, sanitation, and everything else. And we look at things in terms of cost, money, and in terms of benefits. Quite often people forget those. And thank you for highlighting that, because obviously it has been quite eye-opening in terms of it's not just a borehole that gives you water, it's safety, it's everything else. So I was quite amazed. Thank you.
Can I ask a general question? When you say this year's project is gender justice and the next one will be clean water, when does your year start and end?
So this particularly for the Helping Hand appeal, it runs from January to December. Yeah. So this gender justice one will run to the end of December, and then we're working on the materials right now for next year's appeal, which will start. It's essentially like if you raised money for it on January the 23rd next year, it will go towards the clean water thing. Although our projects are ongoing all the time across all of the different kind of areas of work. So like people could support a food security project if they wanted, or different things. It's just this is how we highlight them on for the Helping Hand appeal, because it's kind of one of our biggest campaigns each year.
I think it would be good. I mean, it's given us all a lot of food for thought. And I think although we very often think of our community and our direct community that we need to take care of, we are part of an international organisation that cares for others across the globe. And I think it would be good for us to sort of mobilise in some way. I'm going to get some ideas if anybody wants to smile and put their thumbs up. Yeah, I think it would be good to sort of have something in mind, especially when we know the benefits of a particular project, to see how we can help. But if everybody's happy and doesn't want to add anything else, I'll stop the recording. Anybody else got any other questions?